Hey everyone, my name is Addison Spears, and I'm here with Pastor Amy Carter to talk about how to navigate the holidays while dealing with grief and loss. So, Pastor Amy, we recently had a forum on grief and loss, and we really in that forum talked about what grief is and why it's important to process it and even how to process it in some cases. And as we move towards the holidays, we have some tools and tips to really help people navigate the holidays while dealing with grief and loss. So we have 10 of them. So number one, what is the first thing that people can do to help them navigate through the holidays with grief and loss?
Okay, number one is mark your calendar. And what that really means is give yourself time, intentional space to recognize that you're going to need some time to grieve during the season. Sometimes the holidays happens fast and furious. It can feel like, especially in a time when you're going through loss and grieving, it feels like it's happening at you. And so it's important that you really intentionally set aside some space to give your time to process and to allow you to kind of just orient to what you're feeling.
Right. And so that could be marking your calendar like physically. That could be like setting a digital appointment to say this is what we're going to do on it.
Yes.
And that could even mean maybe getting some friends together and saying, hey, at this time, this is kind of what I need in order to make that happen.
Yeah. Like for myself, I had 1 year, I intentionally set some time aside on my calendar to go through some pictures. And it didn't take a lot of time, but I took a little bit and just gave myself like 45 minutes to sit there and just look at some pictures and just kind of reflect, because I knew I needed to make some. If I didn't allow myself time to do that, it was going to creep out into work. I knew, it would come out in other ways. So it sounds kind of weird, like I'm going to make an appointment with my grief, but actually it does help. It allows you to have an intentional space to let off, you could say, kind of open the valve a little bit and let the steam out.
I think that's solid. So I think that leads really well into our next 2 and 3 points. So point number 2, what's point number 2 for us?
Grieve ahead of time. And what that means is it's kind of the art of pre-grieving. So as you're heading into holidays, take a moment, you just think about how things used to be and who used to do them, and anticipate what that's going to feel like. Think about for a minute, I'm going to Thanksgiving, and that person that always sat at that part at the table, that space may not be there.
Right.
And maybe that holiday you change up the seating arrangement.
Right.
Try to anticipate, without getting too. You're not going to be able to anticipate every single moment.
Right. Can't control everything.
That's right.
But you can anticipate that, hey, this music is going to be present. This food is going to be present. There is going to be an empty chair this year during the holidays. So what can you do that's within kind of your sphere of control in order to make some adjustments for yourself?
Right. And why this is also so important, Addison, is because we're so afraid of the empty chair. So nobody wants to acknowledge or think about what that's going to feel like. But there's people sitting here listening to this, and they know that there's going to be an empty chair there this year.
Right.
And the fear of that can actually, if you don't acknowledge that in advance and allow your heart and your soul to kind of get around that for a minute, you'll emotionally disconnect. And then you won't be able to be present in that moment to the fullness otherwise that you could be.
That's excellent. And if you're not present, it becomes a thief.
Yes.
Right? It robs you of time that you could have spending being thankful and present with the people that you currently do have in your life.
Absolutely.
That's excellent. Excellent. So what about number 3? What's our third one?
Yeah, that's make a plan. You've got this holiday season, and you know that there's things that are going to happen. You're going to be invited to events. We all have our traditions, but it's really helpful. And I've done this myself, and I actually do this every holiday season still. But I sit and I make a plan. I look at what's happening over the next month, 2 months in November and December, and I start to strategize and think about, okay, what do I want to introduce into
Right.
my holiday? Maybe there's a new tradition. Maybe I want to, I'm going to go to a holiday concert this year. I've never done that before. And also for people where loss is fresh, this is really helpful to make a plan, because then you can also, in doing that, it also gives you a chance to reflect, anticipate maybe that tradition that you've always done every year. You go to your friend's house on Christmas Eve every year, and everybody gets together, but this year it's going to be really painful for you. You can then give yourself permission to change the plan. Change the plan to what will work for you, and only you will know what that is.
Excellent. I love that. I love the fact that just kind of these first three really work together in a combination that can lead you to some really great results. And so that the first one is, again, mark your calendar. Second one is to grieve ahead of time. Third one is to make a plan. And so what's number 4? I really love number 4 and where it can go and the benefits of it.
And this is important, especially in a family setting. But everyone has their process, and you have to acknowledge that. So what works for you and your grief and whatever your process is in that, it could be very different than somebody else. It could be your spouse. It could be your children, friends. But you have to acknowledge that everybody has their own process, and it's unique. And what the depth and the way that you're feeling your pain is not going to be the same as how your spouse is feeling it, or your sibling, or your children even. And that's really important, because as much as we want permission for our process, we have to also be able to give people permission for theirs and have understanding towards that. So when your spouse maybe isn't tracking with you exactly where you're at in that moment, you have to understand that where you might be in a dip, they may not be right there with you. They might be, maybe that day they're actually okay. And you have to be careful not to resent them, or as I call it, should on them. Right. You should feel like this because this is what I feel like. That's real danger in our self-grief process, is that oftentimes, because it is so isolating. Right. And we want somebody there with us, but the reality is that people can only be there to a certain extent, including your spouse, including your loved ones. There's only so far that they can go in your grief with you. There is a place where it is just you and God.
That's excellent. I think that speaks to the fact that God made us all unique and all different, and we all have different needs, especially as it surrounds grief and loss. That's excellent. And so let's talk about number 5. I think that this wasn't something that, even in looking at this resource guide, which you can get access to this guide at Abundantlife.Online, just to follow through these 10 things that can help you navigate through the holiday season. But let's hit on number 5 again. I thought that this great, but it was a little unexpected for me.
Yes. Number 5 is self-care is critical. When you are grieving and you're in that place, in that space, it is not something that is going to necessarily be done in a matter of a set amount of time. And the toll that grieving takes on your body physically, as well as emotionally, is intense. It takes a lot of energy. And some of those that are listening here today know exactly what I'm talking about. It takes a ton of energy to get up the next morning after the services are over and everybody's gone home, and now you have to start your new daily routine, whatever that's going to look like. And you're trying to work that out. You have to go back to work. The rest of the world all wants you to be normal. Everybody wants to know that you're okay, so they can move on. Right. And that is extremely, and so you're trying to fit into that and figure out what your new normal is going to be, and it's extremely exhausting. So it's really important that you have to understand. I don't care if you are, the highest type A and you are just a superhuman and you can do 1,000 things at once. And the grieving process, your normal capacity will be diminished. And you have to acknowledge that. And give yourself permission to be able to put boundaries in place for yourself for self-care. That might mean you don't fill up your schedule as much. Maybe you got to take a little bit more time before you go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
Or, whatever that looks like for you, but you've got to kind of really give yourself permission to figure out what that is and then take care of yourself.
Yeah, to actually walk that out. Maybe it's going on a hike, or maybe you do need to kind of sit and read or go to a movie or whatever, work out, whatever it is that actually restores you and fills you. You got to make time and space in order to make that happen.
And that's really important what you said, restores you and fulfills you. So often in the grief process, we run to substances that really aren't restorative and really aren't healing.
Right.
Alcohol, other various substances, drugs.
Netflix.
Right. Yeah, even Netflix.
Things that just numb us.
Numbing things are not necessarily going to refresh. Now, there are times when, a little numbing can help take the pain away, but long term, that actually will slow down your recovery process, as you could call it. So.
Oh, that's excellent. So take time for self-care is number 5. What about number 6? I think number 6 is so key.
This is key. And so often this is something that people say that they don't have, is that you need a support system. You have to get a support system in place of people that can be empathetic where you're at. And the way people give empathy is in 2 different ways. Some people, they empathize with you and they can be there emotionally with you. Mm-hmm. They can sit there with a cup of coffee on your couch. They can give you all the hugs. They can listen to you. They can attune to you. They can absorb that for you emotionally. And those are wonderful people to have. There's other people that are in your life that maybe because they haven't experienced loss as much themselves and they're not so much comfortable with it. It's not that they're not empathizing with you. It's not that they want to be there for you, but maybe the way they can be there for you is more in a physical way, in the sense of supporting you with, your physical needs. Maybe, that's why sometimes when you'll see that when there's been loss, everybody wants to make you something to eat. Mm-hmm. They want to, make sure that you're getting fed. That's still a way for people to empathize and support you, and give yourself permission to receive that type of support.
To accept that help.
To accept it. It's so important. And you might need that over this, maybe this season is not the season for you to be doing all the meals and cooking and doing all the normal things. Let somebody else do that for you.
Right.
And learning to be able to say to the people that are in your life, hey, you know what? I'm just feeling really, today I'm feeling it. I'm feeling alone. Could I come over? Could I come over and just,
just sit with you.
Just sit with you, have coffee. Can I just, I don't need to talk. I just want to be in a house filled with people, with, kids, or I want to be in a room where there's a home where there's life.
Right.
And being okay to ask for that. So that's important. You have to build a support system.
We were designed for community and designed to be with other people. And so I think that it's pertinent that we take time and make space to make sure that our needs are met. And if our needs need to get met by others that are doing life with us and community with us, I think that is incredible to invite others into the process. Absolutely.
And I would say to those that have children and you're trying to walk your children through a loss in the family, the other thing that you can do is allow other people to help you with your kids. And what I mean by that is maybe you just don't have the emotional energy to take your kids to, Disney on Ice. It's coming in,
Take them to that movie that they wanted to go to.
Take them to that movie they want to go to, or whatever it is. Or maybe for your family tradition, it was cutting down a Christmas tree or going Christmas shopping. And that's going to be too painful for you. Let a friend, let a family member take your kids and do that. Mm-hmm. Let other people take parts of the holidays for you with your children so they can continue to have, that moment. They can continue to enjoy that tradition, but it's not all on you to carry that burden. Mm-hmm. Share the burden.
That's excellent. Talk to us about number 7.
So number 7 is check in with your body. And it is really connected with the self-care piece, which is you have to take close attention to how you're feeling physically. During grief, during loss, it's so important to make sure that you're taking practical steps.
Right.
You know, if you're somebody that exercises, continue that. Go for a walk, even if you don't normally. Just getting outside will help you. It'll help to clear your mind. It does something to you to go for a walk, to be outside. Eat right. You know, this isn't so often we want to emotionally eat, but that takes a toll on our bodies.
Right. Which actually impacts how we can manage our emotions.
Absolutely. When I remember my mother was in the hospital and we were up there every day. And I just didn't have capacity to really think through my own self-care at that point because I was so obsessed with taking care of her. And because I didn't do a good job of building a number 6, you know, in my life of really allowing my friends to support me in the way that they wanted to, I wanted to do it all. So I'm up at the hospital. I'm eating out of vending machines. I'm skipping meals.
Right.
I'm just, you know, all stress eating. And at the end of that segment, once my mother had, you know, transitioned and at the other end of it, I was in a place physically where I was not well. And I had taken a real toll on my body from all of that abusive emotional eating that I did. So it can feel like it's not important, but it really is.
Critical.
Very critical that you really check in, make sure that you're doing what you can to be healthy, because your body will keep score.
So let's move to number 8. I think number 8 is often missed when we're talking about navigating grief and loss.
Yes. 8 it sounds kind of odd, but plan some fun. You know, give yourself permission to laugh. If you're having a moment and all of a sudden you're going along and you're actually happy, don't all of a sudden say, oh, wait, what's wrong with me? I should be sad. Again, shooting on yourself and then going back and pulling away from that. But it's okay. You might, in this process, you're going to still have some bright moments.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be every day dark and dismal. But allow yourself to have fun too and plan some fun. Maybe the traditions of what you did in the past, because there's so much emotion tied to them, it can be hard to find the joy in those. But if you sit down and plan in advance and you maybe work into your holidays something a little outside the norm, maybe this could be hey, you know what, kids? Put your jackets on. We're gonna go outside and we're gonna go sledding.
Right.
Something completely random and just off the cuff and something that you wouldn't normally do, but it's spontaneous. It's fun.
Or you're gonna make a new tradition.
Or make a new tradition. Absolutely. Yeah. But allow for yourself to kind of look for something fun to do.
That's awesome. Yeah, lean into how you're feeling in the moment. If it's happy, feel happy. If it's something else, then feel it. But be present with your feelings with that. It's awesome. What about number 9?
Well, number 9 is write your feelings down. Not a lot of people are journalers. I'm not. I'm not a big journaler. But there is in that season, when you're going through this and you have a lot of intense emotions, sometimes just writing down a few things of what you're feeling helps to kind of untangle it. And
right. Make it clear for you.
Make it clear. What I found is there's 2 things, writing and speaking. Get it from internally embedded in us and it gets it out. So writing in that season can be really helpful. And it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be big paragraphs.
Sure.
But just a little bit of writing some things down will help to, again, get it from you being, because grief is so internal. And the more that you do it externally, the more you'll find the healing to flow.
And what about our last one? So as we end our time, as we come to the close of our time together, we've talked about a lot of different ones. What's number 10?
Know your buttons. We all have buttons. We all have things that can trigger us, and certain things will trigger certain emotions. And it's important to recognize the buttons that push you. And if you need to, avoid them. It might be that your tradition every year as a family was that you were going to go to see the Christmas tree lighting in Clinton Square here in
Right.
Syracuse. And maybe you just know if you go down
As soon
there,
as I see this Christmas tree,
you're spiraling.
Yep.
So avoid it. Don't do that this year. Change your tradition. Also, there are large traditions, and then there are the unspoken traditions that we have built into our holiday season that we're not even aware of, and into even everyday life. So this translates not even into just the holiday season. We talk about the big 2 days, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then of course, New Year's a little bit. But after you've lost somebody, you'll discover very quickly that there are routines of life that you've built with that person that you're not even aware of, and certain things will trigger an emotion or will trigger something that will bring a memory back to you. For me, there was a time right after my father passed away, I walked into a office supply store, and I was walking down an aisle, and I saw a box of a special brand of pens that he loved.
Wow.
And I always would buy those for him when he would run out. And I saw that box, and it came back to me like a flood, and I was back in the living room with my father, and I just got super emotional.
Wow.
So, these things can come unexpectedly. But knowing what your buttons are, and then finding and devising a way to kind of soften that. So another thing is oftentimes it's the first time you come home to an empty house.
Right.
And during the holiday season, especially if you've lost your spouse and it's just you and them, and now you're coming home to an empty house, an empty home can feel extremely cold. So something that I do, and I do this not just in the holidays, but just periodically throughout where I'm feeling. If I know what my buttons are, and sometimes I know. So what I'll do is I'll leave a light on in my living room. So when I first walk in, there's a warm light in my living room on, and I leave music looping on my iPad. So I come home, I walk into a home with a light on and soft music playing in the background.
Right. It feels full.
It feels full. I feel like I'm not walking into a cold room or home, but a warm home. And
That's
it really
beautiful.
helps to diminish that sense.
That is beautiful. And I think once you know your buttons, I'm kind of a person who doesn't like to say no. Instead of using the language of just no, which can feel kind of harsh and intense, one of the things that I like to just say is that's not going to work for me. So if you know that there's a button that's going to be pressed if you go to that Christmas tree lighting, or if you have a certain brand of hot chocolate, or you're going to go to Grandma Ida's house or X, Y, and Z, you can just say, listen, that's not going to work for me this holiday season. And then you're going to walk into, or you're going to do something else. But you don't have to say that. And if you do use the word no, or just telling people that doesn't work for me, no is a complete sentence. So you don't have to justify it. You don't have to explain it away. You can just say no.
That's right.
Enough. And that's okay.
That's right. Yep. That's excellent. I love that.
Well, thank you, Pastor Amy, for taking the time to sit with me and talk to me about these 10 things to help people really navigate through the holidays. Absolutely. Just to recap before we leave today, the first one is to mark your calendars. Make sure that you have an appointment with grief in some capacity. Number 2 is that you want to grieve ahead of time. What this is going to help you to do is anticipate what it's going to feel like. And then you can do number 3, which is to make a plan. All right. You're going to plan out your holidays. You're going to plan out the month, what events you're going to go to, what you're not going to go to, how you're going to participate in them. Number 4 is that everyone has their own process. So grief looks different for everyone because we are all made different and unique. And it's important that you understand that people are going to grieve differently. Number 5 is that self-care is critical. And so this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you want to make sure that you're physically, mentally, and emotionally and spiritually going to get through this. And you need to refuel yourself with things that are actually restorative and vital to your health. Number 6 is that you need a support system. We're built for community. Support systems will give you the empathy that you need to continue to go through and walk through this process. Number 7 is that you want to check in with your body. You want to just pay close attention to what you're physically feeling as well. So what you're eating, how you're exercising, how you're sleeping, all those things can really impact how you're going to manage your emotions on a practical level. So you want to make sure that you're just checking in with your body. Number 8 is that you want to plan some fun. Allow yourself to enjoy and have bright spots and bright moments, not just throughout the holidays, but throughout your entire grief process. Number 9 is that you want to write your feelings down. So writing your feelings down and speaking them takes them from a really static place to a kinetic place, to where you can actually process them and get them out in the open, and it will help provide you clarity so that you can handle them and deal really with your emotions. And the last, and certainly not least, is number 10. You want to know your buttons. So you're going to want to know what's going to trigger you, what is going to challenge you in this season and just throughout this grieving process. And you want to make sure that you are making a plan and changing things around that so that you have what you need to experience life at its fullest. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. You can get access to the resource packet that we reference at Abundantlife.Online. You can hear the full conversation that we had on grief and loss at our website as well. We'll leave it here for today, and we'll see you next time.